So here it is. This is a standard giant size map of the world with all the countries colored in. Somebody has put a hole in Italy, I don't know why. So anyway, let's get down to business, okay? So I was born in Sydney, Australia in 1985. I lived here for 30 years. And in my time in Australia, I only ever went to New South Wales, ACT, Victoria. I didn't get to Victoria until I was 30. I spent many times in Cairns visiting my dad in Queensland, and then I visited my brother once in Brisbane. And then I went to Darwin when I was 29, but I didn't say anything Darwin as I had to fly to a nearby island. But I've never been to West Australia, never been to South Australia, I've been to Tasmania. I was in Australia for 30 years. Don't really like the country. I don't like the politics of the country itself, the customs of pricks. So that's why I became British and left Australia. Now, I took many trips as a child to New Zealand, and I spent most of my time in Napier. That's where my mum was born, and then Palmerston North, where my bitch Aunt Kathy lives. And I don't really like New Zealand because I'm an anti-imperialist, I'm against white imperialism, and New Zealand customers are also pricks and stuff, and I don't like anything much about New Zealand. So I was traveling back and forth from New Zealand when I was like 20 to 23. Then when I was 24, went to America. So flew to Los Angeles, 12-hour flight. Spent a whole week here in Los Angeles. Then I spent most of my time living in New York City. I saw Winger in Chicago, like right up here. And I also saw Heart in Phoenix, Arizona. And what else did I see? I also went to Maryland Death Fest in near Washington D.C., like Baltimore, like East Coast. And I did go to Canada. Like I went to Montreal to meet a porn star, Carol Cox, and I didn't end up losing my virginity with her. And then I spent most of my time in Toronto, or Toronto. I guess I didn't pronounce it with a T. So I came back to Australia broke at 24, and I had ambitions to travel the world and stuff, but I was unemployed, and I had really bad luck, like holding them down a job. So then I got a job in Sydney in Borkham Hills at the Little Rock Cafe, which I call a Shit Rock Cafe, so I worked for 24 weeks. And so at 25, I traveled to Beijing in China. And I had 13 hours in Beijing, then I flew all the way the first time to London, and that's where I met up with my cousins, John and Charles. John, whom I backstabbed a year later because he wasn't supportive of me moving to the UK, but he now lives in New Zealand. So then I went to France to see the Scorpions in Nantes, or near Cleveland. But before that, I ended up in Belgium by mistake. And so when I was in Belgium, I thought I'd also get a Luxembourg down here. And after Hellfest, I spent a lot of time in tiny countries. There was Monaco, San Marino, and then Andorra, which is based here. I did go to Spain, but I haven't hardly seen anything of Spain. I flew from Barcelona to Malaga down here, went to Gibraltar, and then I took the ferry across to Morocco. So Tangier, Morocco is the only part of Africa I've ever been to. Now I came back to Europe 13 months later, but before that I did a bit of traveling for a few days in Southeast Asia. Went to Kuala Lumpur, took a train down to Singapore, and then to one of these islands of Indonesia, and then I flew from Malaysia to London, took a bus to Hamburg, where I attend Headbangers Open Air, and then I flew to Middlesbrough to see my dad's family, meet my grandma, because my grandma was like 83 at the time, and I didn't know she was still alive, and my dad hadn't spoken to her in over 40 years. So then I flew to Istanbul, and took the bus to Ankara, the capital, and I took a train all the way to Tehran, to Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran's my favorite country, despite all the politics and stuff. I see Iran as a better country than Australia and New Zealand, but that's just my political opinions and all. So I'm an anti-imperialist. Then I went to the UAE for a few hours before flying to Delhi, in India for Independence Day. Didn't really like India that much. Basically, because all the locals want to overcharge you and screw around with you. Like even in Delhi, the bus that I was traveling around broke down, so I just swore my head off at the third-party idiots, and I just went around Delhi on a rickshaw. But after that, I went to Nepal, and I would end up going to Nepal twice within a 12-month period. I went back to Hellfest again at France, and then I was going to live in the UK for a bit, but then I had a job in Australia to get back to. So then I just travelled overland from London through up to Amsterdam, where I've been many times, especially in the red light district. Then through Germany to Czech Republic. We only had a few hours, and I traveled through Slovakia, not seeing anything. Spent like 2 days in Budapest, and then traveled to Bucharest. Didn't really like Bucharest, but this is before I had like a smartphone. And then Bulgaria, which I really love, it's quite cheap. And then on to Istanbul, which I flew back to. I flew from there to Dubai, and then from there to Kathmandu, and then from there to Malaysia, and back to Sydney. So then began my 17-month long hiatus. Didn't leave Sydney, Australia. Had an addiction to seeing escorts and all, so I couldn't travel that much. But then December 2014, I went to East Timor, or Timor-Leste. And then before the year was out, I went to Jakarta in Indonesia. Then I ended up back up in Singapore. In 2015, the early years, I traveled from Kuching all the way up to Brunei Darussalam, and spent $120 on a night in a hotel because this hostel they have in Brunei wasn't working. Ended up in Kinabalu, got sick, so I flew all the way back to Australia. One time in Cairns that year, I flew to Papua New Guinea, angering Australian Customs Border Protection for taking a 2-day trip. I told Australian Customs get fucked, I hate the country. And when I came back to Australia, I used my Australian passport as toilet paper. True story. But I had a fun time in Port Moresby 2-hour joint, even though it was an expensive country and very impoverished. But it's much better than going to anywhere in Australia. So then I moved to England properly and lived in Birmingham. And then I was there for a month and couldn't get a job in July or August 2015. And I wasn't really happy getting sworn up by a chef, so I traveled to Brussels, the red light district, and then to Switzerland. Zurich was so expensive, so I spent most of my day in Liechtenstein and a little bit of Austria. Then I took a bus all the way through Slovenia to Croatia. Really loved Croatia, especially Zagreb and Vukovar, this town on the border of Serbia. So went to Serbia, also loved Serbia. Novi Sad and Belgrade are good cities to visit. Then Skopje in Macedonia. And then I lost my card in Bulgaria, so I had to fly back to England and then back to Australia. Then, what was it? April 2016, I went to Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City on the way back to England. Then I traveled with my boss all the way to the very top, to Aberdeen with my cousin. Then I went back down for a job that just didn't materialize because the people are fucking retards. When I said I want to be a waiter, and the job was a chef. So then I traveled all the way to Auschwitz in Poland, like near Krakow and stuff. And then on the train in Warsaw, I had diarrhea. So I flew from Warsaw to Ukraine, and then back to London. Spent all my time back in London waiting for the King Diamond concert. Well, actually, I was living in like Middlesbrough with one of my cousins who I don't talk to anymore. So then I travelled. I flew to Skopje, and then I missed the bus to go to Istanbul, so I had to fly from Bulgaria to Istanbul. And then I flew to the capital of Saudi Arabia, Riyadh. I spent a couple of hours there, so I count that I have been to Saudi Arabia. Then I flew back to Malaysia, to Kuala Lumpur. I travelled overland through Southeast Asia, so up to Thailand, and to the very top where Thailand meets Myanmar, crossed in Myanmar for a few hours. Then all the way back down to Bangkok. across to Phnom Penh in Cambodia and Siem Reap, then all the way back to Bangkok, then up to Vientiane on the border with Laos, into Laos for a day, all the way back to Bangkok, and then back to Kuala Lumpur. Then I lived in Melbourne for 2 months, Melbourne, Australia. Yeah, I was getting screwed around by this employer, Pinnacle people, like not giving me good jobs. So I went back to Sydney, stayed with my mum, help her out and claim the doll. Then I flew to Hong Kong, I returned to China, spent a day in Shenzhen, didn't like it, people spit everywhere. And then I also went to Macau. There's a lot of good Portuguese stuff still in Macau. I flew to Vladivostok in November 2016. Yeah, so I started my Trans-Siberian journey. So I traveled on the Trans-Siberian all the way through like Russia, like even going near the borders of like Mongolia, China, and Kazakhstan. I got a friend I met on the train, Artyom, who lives in Orenburg, which is like on the border of like, Europe and Asia. So I continued on to Moscow, and I got off the train age 31. So then a few days in Moscow, I was getting bored. I skipped down to St. Petersburg, so I took a bus to Estonia. And within a few days, I did Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, all the way back to Estonia. Took the cheap boat across to Helsinki, then had to rush across town to get to Stockholm. I fell in love with Stockholm, and I made my goal that I'd like move here, live there like someday in my life. But I had to go back to England, so all the way down to Copenhagen on the train. Actually, bus train. Really like Denmark, don't care about the price. I travelled back to London, moved back to Birmingham. I got beaten up in Birmingham one night in April 2017, so then I went to Cornwall for a job, didn't like it, so I travelled from Land's End all the way up to John O'Groats up here. And then I didn't leave the United Kingdom for 11 months. From the time I landed in Dover in December 2016. So then, with 2 weeks off, I flew from London to Georgia, to Kutaisi, and went to Tbilisi. Then I spent a week in Central Asia, in Almaty, and Bishkek, in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. Really like these two countries. Then I flew from Almaty back to Tbilisi, and then took a bus to Yerevan, Armenia. We love Armenia. I love the Armenian people, right? Then I went back to London for work. I had Christmas 2017 in Malta. And then 2018 happened. I decided I have to start finishing off my map of Europe. There's not that many countries like left. So January 2018, I spent 2 days in Oslo, Norway. Returned to Scandinavia after 13 months. Then the next month, I went to the Vatican City in Rome, the world's smallest country, for a 24-hour jaunt in Rome. March, went back to Lithuania so I could travel to Minsk and then come back. End of April and start of May, I was in Reykjavik in Iceland. Then June, I got really pissed off with my job in London. So then I traveled from, as part of Croatia, Pula, at the very top, which actually was once part of Italy. Traveled to Mostar, Medjugorje, Sarajevo, and then down to Montenegro, Podgorica, and through Kosovo, disputed. Only spent like a few hours in Kosovo. In Albania, I had 24 hours in Albania and in Tirana. Then to Athens, all the way down to Athens, from Tirana to Athens for 30 euros by bus. Back to Skopje, Macedonia, then I flew to Stockholm. So I lived in Stockholm for bit of June and all of July 2018. Like the country very much, but the government will not give you a personal number unless you have a job. And people in job interviews are fucking xenophobic, asking me why I want to live here, when it's none of their business because they don't work for immigration. So then, flew from Malmo to Yas, where one of my Iranian friends is from. Went to Moldova, Chisinau, the capital. Didn't go to that disputed area with Transnistria, with all the communist stuff. Then I travelled to Ukraine, to Kiev, the capital. Then took a train to Slovakia, and finally probably visited Bratislava. And from a bus from Bratislava all the way back through Germany, Amsterdam, Belgium to UK. So I moved back to the UK in August 2018. November 2018, I went to Faro in Portugal, right down here, and I was there for a couple of days. Then Christmas 2018, I flew from Birmingham to Cancun up here, and within a space of 11 days, I traveled overland from Cancun down to Belize, across to Guatemala, with the city of Flores, to Guatemala City. Really liked El Salvador, like San Salvador, good place. Honduras, didn't really like the capital Honduras. I fell in love with Nicaragua because of its left-wing anti-imperialist stance, and the capital Managua is amazing. And then in Costa Rica and San Jose, I got quite bored because I didn't have the time to travel to Panama City or the time to travel to the border just for laughs. So then I flew back to Cancun, then back to the UK, went back to work in London. Then April 2019, I went to Baku after landing in Georgia, and then I went to Cyprus. Cyprus was my last nation in Europe that I hadn't been to. Then July 2019, I went back to Slovakia to see Dream Theater, then to Hungary for its capital Budapest, hadn't been back in 6 years. Then I flew from Hungary to Larnaca in Cyprus, and then travelled to Lebanon, to the town of Bashari in 2 hours outside of Beirut. Then also visited Beirut, flew back to Cyprus, flew back to England, spent some time in the Channel Islands with my cousin. Then went back to Paris after 6 years, flew from Paris to French Guiana. First time ever going to South America. Then I travelled overland from French Guiana to Suriname, Paramaribo, all the way to Georgetown, then all the way back to Cayenne, and then down to Macapá in the state of Brazil. So Brazil was the last country I'd been to in November 2019. And then also I went to Trondheim earlier this year to see Dream Theater. So now I'm just in London, waiting for what's going to happen next. Do I move to Iceland, or do I move to Uppsala in Sweden? Who knows?